Hey everyone, Phreak here. Patch 10.8 for League of Legends came out, and it's time to do a patch rundown. I'm sorry for missing the last one. I have not managed to... What's the phrasing I want to go for? Manage time well in quarantine. Days passed by, and I forget what day it is, and 10.7 came out, and I was like, I haven't even read the patch notes. And then just like more days went by, and I was like, now it's too late. So 10.8 is coming. This one I do have a rundown for. Let's talk about it. I think it's fairly interesting. Moderate sized. So let's talk about the first things first, which is Aphelios getting further nerfs. Now, he's definitely sub 50 win rate in solo queue. He is still pretty much omnipresent in pro play. I really don't think he needs to be in pro forever anymore. That said, they are doing two different sets of nerfs. They are both nerfing his late game and his early game, in ways where like the early game's not touched and the late game's not touched. So the first of all is they're switching the percent armor penetration. Oh, I got to point out, by the way, that I guess I'm going to be slightly wrong about this. It's going to be close. It's fine. So it's bonus armor pen, so it doesn't actually affect champion's base stats. Again, this is obviously not something you would max early on. It's what people max last in the champion already, but it's becoming lethality. And lethality is essentially a flat armor pen, and it also scales with the, like, your champion level, right? If you're a Aphelios, it scales with your level. Which, you know, sort of by itself means it scales with game time, but also not really because of how armor works. But ultimately, here is the old percent penetration. Here is the new flat penetration. Basically, this is identical if your opponent has this much or more. I guess this much or less bonus armor, right? Since it's bonus armor pen, it only scales off of them having chain vests and things like that. So this is the breakpoint. Now, worth pointing out that for any champion who doesn't have a bunch of bonus armor, right, if you're against just Syndra with Azonias, the flat pen is objectively better in all cases, right? You could look at the data table and it's like, yeah, this is objectively better in all cases. If you're against Calista down in bot lane with a Guardian Angel, objectively better in all cases. It is objectively worse against Maokai with a Sunfire Cape and Ninja Tabby or whatever. So I believe, I'm pretty sure about this, the math does not support maxing this early. I believe it is realistically never better than attack speed. I can look into that. I didn't think about that very much. But my instincts say this is not better. In general, roughly, this will tend to mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% bonus damage. It is essentially a 1 to 6% more damage multiplier. That is roughly accurate in general. That is close to accurate. And you look at the flat AD that you max first, that's obviously better. You look at the attack speed, that's generally better as well. Realistically, you're still going to max this last. And it's, 6% more damage late game to squishies when it was nothing against squishies. So his tank killing is worse, but his squishy killing is better. And I didn't realize this was bonus armor pen when I was first setting up the notes. So I thought it was total armor pen, which makes this, potentially a buff in some cases, opposed to always worse. All right, next up. So that was where I was like, oh, his late game is weaker, but actually not really. So this is the story of a girl, and anyway, so this is his abilities are weaker in the early game. Basically, the attack damage ratio now starts low and catches up at level 13. The cooldown takes longer to scale up overall. The base damage takes longer to scale up overall. So basically, the level 1 ratio is obviously weaker in all cases. The level 9 base damage and cooldown is weaker in all cases, but from level 13 onwards, it's the same. So, like I said, like this only matters at level 13 plus. This only matters at level 13 and lower. So, just FYI, right? It's a different thing going on. This is going to be a pretty big deal. I think it's going to be pretty meaningful. Most of the numbers were really close to similar as far as the AD ratio, so I only did one. It starts 70% as high, and it catches up at level 13. Yeah, difficult to look at. really, really, really tough stuff. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, I mean, you have a 30% lower AD ratio. And I want to point out that this is a character who gets free bonus AD on the kit, right? When you level up and you put points in attack damage, that's bonus AD. That directly feeds into these abilities. It's pretty meaningful. This is going to be felt. I think it's going to go down quite a bit. As I said last time, I didn't think Aphelios needed to be picked in pro every single game. I still think that's true. With this going on, I am going to still think that's true. This guy's going to have a fairly low solo queue win rate, so have fun with that. I'm not sure how Riot's going to figure out a way to get Aphelios to a spot where he is balanced in pro and solo queue, because I don't really feel like he has that many pro-specific strengths. But maybe this is the goal, right? He's worse against tanks, and that was really what he was great about, was his late game tank killing. And that's how they get him out of pro. Maybe, right? We'll see. Next up, Ashe gets 0 to 20% more attack speed on the ability she maxes second. Here is the data table. At level 8 and onwards, it's better. And it's moderately useful, right? This is a solid 10% more attack speed. Ashe frequently goes Blade of the Ruin King into Hurricane, and thus has a lot of attack speed in her build. That tends to diminish the value of this somewhat, but it's still 20% attack speed. That's still 500 gold worth of stats. It's not bad. It's reasonable. And she's going to get some pro play, so she'll get a very little bit more. But she's not going to pass Varus or anything. Next up, Evelyn gets a solid, basically 15 flat damage on her Q. This is the AoE clear part of it that hits multiple targets. Keep in mind, there is an initial projectile that deals damage, and there's a damage amp on the initial target that also deals damage. So I have both those here. So here's the Evelyn, just generic AoE damage that they showed in the patch notes. It is a pretty reasonable damage bump, 90 to 150. Really worth pointing out, this ability does like all of its damage at rank 1, at least the AoE part. All its damage is at rank 1, plus AP ratio, of course. But the empowered version actually scales really, really heavily. The initial target hit, the damage amp and further hits. The initial single target is really, 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 really scales on level, which is why Evelyn still maxes Q. And so you can see that, you know, in the general AoE clear, like hitting a bunch of Raptors or the rest of Krugs or whatever, it's a decent 20 to 11% damage buff, which is solid before AP ratios. It is much less than that when you're going for single target actual assassination. So it's still 15 damage. 15 damage is relevant. 15 damage matters, especially when you're trying to get the R execute, getting them low enough for that to kill them. Yep, great, very strong, good stuff. But when you look at like how much damage the Q can actually deal, you're like, oh, it's only 15 damage. Calista loses 2 armor and some rend slow. So here is the armor table. 2 armor is not that big of a deal. Worth pointing out that Calista actually has very, very, very low overall level 1 base stats. Her base health is like 520, which is fairly low. Her base armor was 23, now it's 21, also very low. But her scaling is quite good, right? Going up to the 90 armor is a bit high for an AD carry. Her health goes to like 2200, very high for an AD carry. I'm fine with that. Like, I think it's interesting that Calista is frail early and tankier late because she starts as an oppressive lane bully and ends hard to teamfight with. I think it's totally fine to have that kind of happen, right? I like having the lever of you have low initial stats but high end game stats. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. I think it's valid, valuable to do. It's a good design lever. I like it. And they're trying to, you know, further sort of bridge that gap where it's like, well, it's hard to balance Rend. Rend is very good. So weak early game. At least durability wise. Sure, okay, whatever. So 2% less durability early game. You know, what percentage less durability late game? Against physical, magic obviously the same. As far as the slow is concerned, champion moves 20 to 5% faster than they would pre-patch. That's how I will do slows in this, by the way, forever on, is how fast is your opponent moving before and after. That's, I think, the appropriate way to sort of do this kind of math against slows. So yeah, you know, a 25% slow becoming 10% slow seems really massive, right? Wow, it's less than half as good. Well, yeah, but it wasn't that good anyway. They moved 20% faster. Instead of moving 0.75, they moved 0.9. That's 20% faster. Now, 20% faster is still pretty meaningful for move speed, right? Like, don't get me wrong, that matters. But, you know, it's in some ways not as incredible of a nerf as you might think. But this is a nice way. I actually kind of like this. It's a nice way to nerf her early game while still letting her, you know, wave clear, right? Still letting Rend be useful as a damage tool. Do want to point out, by the way, that though her winningest build is maxing Q first, her most popular build is maxing E first. So I chose the more popular build order. This will actually push her towards doing Emax again, by the way, because if you're Qmax, you're stuck at 10% slow for the first 7 levels, whereas the new version would have caught up. So this actually probably pushes her towards Emax, which will actually lower her win rate, as it is a weaker build, at least in 10-7. Master Yi gets 5, 10, 15% less attack speed on the ultimate. Again, worth pointing out, this is a champion who builds a lot of attack speed normally. Rage Blade, Ruin King, Blood Razor, those all add a lot of attack speed, so it's, you know, any like flat attack speed difference is not as meaningful, but ultimately you can still see that, yeah, this is still, you know, 4 to 7% less attack speed. It's skewed a little bit towards late game. Master Yi actually has very, very, very low base stat attack speed scaling. It's actually almost all in the ultimate and obviously his item purchases. So take with that what you want. Basically, it means if you're not building much attack speed overall, like you're actually doing an Infinity Edge build for some reason, which you probably shouldn't be, but if you were, you're gonna feel this a lot because all the attack speed is really coming from your ult and your item purchases, which is fine. I think it's totally reasonable for a champion like Master Yi to have low base stat attack speed because math works out pretty well for him in that regard because the power is elsewhere. And yeah, I mean you're gonna feel this somewhat, right? This is a sort of snowballing nerf. Okay, I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine to do. Master Yi is generally winning quite a bit, so totally fine. Next up is Orianna. Orianna definitely gets a fair bit of play in pro, not a ton. She's not huge, but she's around a little bit. She's like in meta, I guess, if you want to say it that way. So like your win rate must be fairly low, or they wouldn't be buffing her. But ultimately, 0.1 higher AP ratio on the E shield. Okay, I'm not going to math that out too much. It's 25% more AP ratio shielding. But the haste and slow being 10% higher is interesting because it lets me dive into something that I was going to talk about a little bit, which is adding 10% to a slow or a haste means more for the slow than it means for the haste. So it also, the more it scales, the more it matters for a slow compared to a haste. Because again, adding 20%. So the haste gives you about 8% more move speed in kind of all cases. The math lines up pretty cleanly. It's pretty easy to look at. You know, I go from running at 1.3 to 1.2. It's about 8% more. So that's pretty easy to look at. The slow is interesting because they go from moving up 0.6 to moving up 0.5. That's actually much more meaningful, right? That's actually, that's 1/6 as opposed to 1/12, essentially, right? So you're actually going to feel this a lot more than you feel the other. Like, you will still get some value, right? It's still, again, 8-ish% more move speed. That's not bad. That's quite good. That'll help you run away. That'll help your teammates chase or you chase or whatever. That is still a buff, but it is even more of a buff to the slow, which is cool. I think it's interesting. Also, the slow decays over time. Also, diminishing returns exists, which we never do here in this channel because it's just not worth it. It's just not important enough. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be felt, right? This is actually pretty meaningful. You're going to slow people down. This is a pretty big deal. I expect Orianna to like really kind of push into meta quite a bit more. This is decent. All right, so Ryze gets 5 health, half an armor, 1 attack damage, and then some move speed on the Q in the early game. So here's his health before and after. I went to 10th of a percent because it was so meaningless. Goes up to quite a lot of health late game, by the way. 2200 for a ranged champion, quite high. They intentionally made him quite tanky. Here's his armor before and after. You notice that his armor scales basically normal for a ranged champion. 73 is normal for a ranged champion. That's like what you usually end up at, 70 to 80. This is totally reasonable, by the way. And even counting for the 5 health and the half an armor bonus, he gets between 1.2 and 0.5% more physical damage durability. Like, yeah, this kind of rounding, I love to see it. I'm happy to see it. I'm a fan. It does not change the balance of the champion in any way. Attack damage +1, that has some level of meaning. And then we'll go into the movement speed buff very much right afterwards. So yeah, 1 AD is actually somewhat decent. It will occasionally help you last hit. Like, it's fine, great, we're about it, cool, sounds good. Move speed change, actually pretty reasonable. This is of some level of use. 8 to 4% move speed, cool, great, yep. It's really 7 to 3% move speed as far as a comparison point, but yeah, nice, another sort of round of small buffs. I mean, Ryze is definitely not really in meta. it's pretty much Shizuke and no one else plays him. I mean, for the most part, he's around a little bit, don't get me wrong, but I have to kind of say that I'm really happy with how they managed to make Rise changes. Rise's solo queue winner has slowly been climbing up and climbing up and climbing up. He is pretty close to approaching 50% and has yet to take over pro play. Like, he exists and a few teams and a few players play him, but they have managed to land Rise in a decent spot. And same for Silas. And I feel like Rise still feels like Rise. He does Rise things. They managed to do the right level of changing mechanics around, changing numbers around to actually put Rise in a decent spot. Well done. Like, realistically, like, well done. Next up, small nerf to Senna. This is about 10% fewer souls from minions dying around her. Senna has landed in a pretty balanced spot in solo queue. She's like towing 50%. I think she's slightly above it. But she's still a really, really high ban rate in pro. Teams are still not willing to play against fasting Senna plus, a farming Galio or Tom Kench or whatever. In general, whenever you're in a situation where the ban rate is far higher than the pick rate, in the sense that, like, the champion is not 100% presence, right? If the ban rate is 80% and the pick rate is 20%, like, okay, champ's OP. When the ban rate is 80% and the pick rate is 8%, I'm like, not that Senna's exactly there, like, that's not exactly her numbers, but she's not 100% presence, right? Like, she goes unpicked plenty of times when she's not banned. In general, it means teams are over-banning, that they're not really sure what their last ban should be, but they're like, but we don't want them to play Senna. That's going to be, like, it's either like, they're going to nullify bot difference with it, or it's like, I don't know. At a certain point, like, teams just don't value one ban a whole lot. Not that Senna's weak, not that Senna isn't okay to ban or pick in pro, but in general, she's one of those champs where the ban rate is far higher than the pick rate, and when she's unbanned, she's still unpicked half the time, roughly. So, just that. More nerfs to Set, 10 to 30 damage off the W. So there's just the flat damage difference. It's pretty meaningful, 10 to 14% damage. It's going to be felt. But this is also calculating his, not looking at runes or items or anything, looking at his max health, his max grit, then his max damage with grit, and saying, okay, what could theoretically be the W damage? And it's this. And you can obviously see that this ability could do well over double damage before even counting for AD ratios and stuff, and bonus health and other things like that. But ultimately, what it comes down to is, yeah, even though the base damage can far outstrip what this ability can do, it's still a pretty reasonable 6% damage nerf, and more so in the mid game before the health kind of catches up with the damage nerf. Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere between those, right? Because you won't literally always have full grit in every punch, so you're somewhere between 14 and 6% damage off. Yeah, that's meaningful. That's 10%, kind of all things considered. Not all things considered, because the AD ratio is not being considered here, but yeah, this is a pretty meaningful nerf, even though, like, yeah, but what about the grit? It's like, well, here you go. Still meaningful. 30 off is decent. So this is going to be felt. I think Set is still going to be pretty big in pro, but good nerf. Soraka has managed to be removed from top lane. Well done, absolutely. They have managed to completely just destroy the top lane win rate. Support Soraka is like 50.1% win rate. In general, enchanters tend to get to sit above 50% because they feel less oppressive. Like, I've brought this up a couple times, going to bring it up again. Like, actual numerical game balance is not that important. It is the game feeling fun. I'm going to make a reference that most of you haven't experienced. Actually, we'll use two different references. We'll use AI opponents in PvE games. Like, let's say everyone loves to talk about Fear and how great the AI is in Fear. But also, let's say, like, dungeon mastering in D&D. It doesn't actually matter if the characters are balanced. It doesn't actually matter if the encounters are balanced. It doesn't actually matter if the AI is good. What matters is the game is fun. And you may think, a balanced game or a game with good AI is fun. No, it's not. A game with good AI makes you frustrated because they're actually smart and they're probably smarter than you. In general, this tends to be true, by the way. No. A game with good AI, well, a game that is fun uses the AI in interesting ways to make you do fun things. These ones run at you and yell and charge, and you've got to shoot them before they reach you, but there's snipers in the back. No, a good AI would have the suicide opponent hide behind cover the entire time and make no noise. That's a really frustrating monster and is not fun to deal with ever. Just FYI, right? Like, good AI is not actually fun. Good AI is frustrating. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's not a fun game. So getting out of that topic, a well-balanced PvP game, or a correctly balanced PvP game, whatever, close enough, it's not about the win rate going to 50%. It's about saying, well, if Soraka's 50-50, and Sona's 50-50, and Nami's 50-50, and Janna's 50-50, then Leona is also 50-50, but Leona feels way worse to die to than to lose lane to Soraka. Has to come from somewhere. And it generally means that, look, Leona and Nautilus and Thresh and whoever else can sit at 48, and Soraka and Sona and Nami can sit at 52, and Zyra and what down the line, right? You'll have more fun when that's the case. So, Soraka is technically balanced and getting buffed. Now we're back on topic. 50 flat mana and 15 mana cost off the queue. Here you go. I tend to really like when, mana pools just hit 1,000. I still think we should try to do that. We are ever slowly stat creeping League of Legends. Which, by the way, I think is interesting because this keeps happening, right? We keep stat creeping base mana. There was a time when I think 0 champions got to 1,000 mana. I think Kog'Maw was one of the very first to have 1,000 mana in League of Legends. And don't get me wrong, Kog'Maw was champion number 51. So, hey, that's a throwback from 9 years ago. But there was a time when basically no one reached 1,000 mana. Now, increasingly, a lot of champions do. And the problem with this, by the way, is it makes it's power creep, and it's power creep in a way that and power creep tends to be insidious. Like it's a lot of small things that keep adding up, and then because one champ does it, the rest have to do it, and then suddenly you're in a world where oh crap, Sapphire Crystal sucks. Oops. We forgot that Sapphire Crystal is now only 5% more mana instead of 20% more mana because we kept power creeping base mana. So, guess Sapphire Crystal sucks. And also, well, our base mana costs, or our base mana pools keep going up, and then our base mana costs keep going up to compensate for the base mana pool, so now flat mana regen like Doran's Ring also sucks. Oh, and all our base mana regen numbers, those also have to go up because, well, it's 80 mana per spell instead of 60 mana per spell, and so when I regenerate 2 mana per second, well, that takes 30% longer to get that mana back. Oh, crap. And so, 5 different systems all get screwed over if you keep power creeping. Which is why, and to be fair, consistency above all else is not correct, don't get me wrong. It's fine in general, it's not a huge deal, but it's just I don't know, I super love consistency, just in general, especially in places where there's no reason to have it. I think exceptions are fine when they are exceptional. Soraka is not an exceptional champion, where she has this mystical special mana scaling. No, Soraka, like any other champion who's mana, can just stop at 1k and just lower her mana cost. It's fine. I don't even mind that she starts at 425. That makes total sense for a support champion who doesn't get to level very much, right? Soraka is exceptional. She is a support. She doesn't level as much as other champions. And for what it's worth, in that case, does she ever break level 16? No. In no realistic game of League of Legends does Soraka break level 16, which means she functionally has less than 1,000 max mana. In which case, hey, you got me. Right? Here's an exception for an exceptional case. She's a support. She's not going to hit 18. In that case, sure. But at the same time, again, I think level 1 mana going high is fine for the exact same reason. She's not going to level up as much, so she deserves a bigger mana pool. I think that's okay. Same for her base mana regen can be high. That's fine. I'm totally about that. I think it's totally reasonable to do. But in general, I would like if champions stopped at 1k and we just affected their base mana costs. Anyway, 13 to 5% more base mana. Pretty solid 25 to 20% less mana cost on Q. Yeah, she's going to get to spam a lot more Qs in lane. I looked up her most common build order. It is indeed Q max second. Seems to be pretty comparable for highest win rate, so don't really need to change this around in any way. Q being more spammable, by the way, tends to let you want to max a bit more. If you're gonna spam Q on cooldown, you probably want it to be a slightly more impactful ability, even though the percentage mana cost, buff goes down over time. This will push you a little bit towards maxing Q first because you get to spam it. Makes you play a little bit more aggro as Soraka, bigger mana pool to spam with. I mean, yeah, she's gonna gain quite a bit here. This is gonna be a pretty meaningful buff. Next up, Tristana gets a higher AD ratio on explosive charge. This is one of the only abilities I've seen where the actual ratio triples. It's pretty incredible that the actual AD ratio triples over time. The base damage barely scales, by the way. This is even more reason to not build double Zeal on Tristana. I've been saying it for a very long time, over 3 years. Don't build double Zeal on Tristana. Build a Reaver or a Stormrazor third. Stormrazor is pretty good, but really, this is a 1.5 bonus AD ratio, and that's before the multiplier off hitting multiple times. Just do it, okay? The ratio is really, 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 really high. It goes up to like 2.8 or something. It's absurd. Just build attack damage in Tristana. Just do it. Thank you. Next up, Urgot gets a nice little bug fix. Now has a total CC duration of 1.5 seconds, including stun duration and time flung. Hooray. That's good. Issue wasn't getting extra moves on the dash. Hooray. Good stuff. And then 20 to 0 seconds cooldown buff on the R. Hoorah. Good stuff. Small Urgot buffs. I think, yeah, he tends to be in a slightly weak spot. I know there's been a lot of like melee range splits that have been happening, and Urgot is mechanically a ranged champion and functionally a melee one, and that's rough. He is unfortunately an exception, and he needs to be exceptional. Right? He's gonna build all of the Darius items and doesn't benefit from them, and that sucks, right? That feels bad. I'm sorry for Urgot players who get kind of screwed over by that, right? Conqueror stacks slower for you. Yep, you're ranged. Sorry. To be fair, he has like infinite attack speed on the W, so like he has ways to catch that up anyway. But yeah, I'm sorry, Urgot, but here's direct buffs to compensate. And it means like realistically every single time that Riot makes an item system change and it has a melee range split, Urgot's going to need compensation buffs. And that's just life. Varus gets a small nerf on the R, 20 seconds off at rank 1. Basically, it's the exact same nerf that this has. They almost traded cooldowns. They almost traded cooldowns. I think it would have been funny if they did, just put him there. Put him at 120 to 70, put this guy at 110 to 70, whatever, doesn't matter. It's really not that meaningful. But yeah, small Varus nerf, cool, good stuff. It's a very, 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 very minor nerf. Like, this is not going to drop him out of Pro. He's a top 3 AD carry in Pro. He's going to remain top 3 AD carry in Pro. This cooldown nerf is going to do nothing. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anything at all. Next up, cool buff. Multiple feather E is better on Xayah. And here's the data table. It is, by the way, right, so feather 1 is 100, then 90, then 80, then 70, then 60, then 50, and it caps at 10%. It caps at 10% more damage per dagger, by the way. Now it's, 5% less damage per dagger. So 100, 95, 90, 85, 80, 75, 70. So here's the damage, right? The more feathers you have, the more damage it does, obviously. 18 feathers is fairly unrealistic. Feathers last for 6 seconds, and max attack speed is 2.5, which means if you were just turbo attacking, you get to 15. Your R adds 5 on top. 18 is still unrealistic. I think it's 6 on top, whatever, close enough, who cares? You're going to be in this world a lot. Realistically, like 3, you're going to be in this world a lot. 9 is even pretty high. So you're looking at maybe let's go 9, let's go 3 to 6. This is mostly what you're looking at. This is the majority of blade callers. This scales off base damage, it scales off AD ratio. And it's a solid 10-ish% more damage. Not bad. Not bad at all. That's meaningful. That's pretty nice. Zyra Khan is already in pro play. Yeah, I mean, they are adding some AD carry diversity, right? Like Xayah is kind of on the outside looking in. Like Aphelios is top tier, Senna's top tier, MF and Varus are, right behind at A tier. Um, and then here's an Ashe buff, here's an Aphelios nerf, here's a Senna nerf, here's a Varus nerf, here's a Xayah buff. It's like, and we got Kaisa buff just really recently as well, right? So, yeah, I mean you're getting a much closer A tier now, the AD carry pool. I think that's really cool. I like these love taps. I think they're good, push in the right direction. Be curious to see what like 10.8 champs look like. I'm not sure if there's any leagues that are going to play in 10.8. Maybe LCK playoffs. I'm actually not sure. I know NA and EU are staying on 10.6, so we'll see. But yeah, I'm curious what the pool looks like after this set of changes. A lot of nice quality of life border updates for recasts and channels and empowerment. That's awesome. Great stuff. Funnel getting nerfed another 6 minutes and another 10% gold for monsters. So if you earned, 10% gold for minions. If you earned 1,000 gold for monsters, instead of 500 gold for minions, it's 40 gold for minions turns on funnel, and for 20 minutes. As far as I can tell, this doesn't seem to be hurting real junglers. It doesn't seem to be. I could be wrong. I haven't noticed it very much. I haven't seen a lot of complaints about it. From what I know, the actual rate of funneling has gone down substantially. It's like at like a quarter of what it was at its height. So these changes are working pretty well. As far as I can tell, junglers aren't running into this very much. They're not getting, like, real junglers aren't getting hit very much. So that's good as well. That's good. And they're trying to do, okay, let's further nerf it, let's further get rid of it, because it still exists, it's still there, and they're saying, hey, can we kill it entirely? This should be fine. So, cool. Always nice to see, right? Nice to see. Death changes. So now, when you die, you get a mini home guard, which saves you about 2.5 seconds getting back to lane. This slightly helps you not have to run TP in something like top or bot or mid on dying. This is actually especially good for mid, because you're really going to get back to lane super fast. This is generally going to be felt more, I would actually, unless it's a super long duration. If it's really, really, really long duration, low potency, it's not going to be especially better for mid, but if it only lasts like 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds and then falls off, it's going to mean more for mid comparatively. I'm actually not sure which way it goes. But ultimately, okay, kills hamper you less. Also, a solo kill is more XP, and a ganked kill is less XP. And then in mid-game, slightly less XP. And slightly more for the solo kill. So, yeah, I mean, this is a laning phase tweak, right? Where it's like, okay, look, if you actually solo kill the guy, if you solo kill your opponent top lane, they get back to lane faster, but you got 20% more XP. In general, I would say that if the turret's in the middle of killing minions, this is roughly 1 minion dying. A melee minion takes about 2.5 seconds to kill. It takes about 1.5 for it to kill a ranged minion. For like a turret just like auto-attacking. So this roughly saves someone 1 minion of XP and 1 minion of gold. 20% more XP for a kill is roughly, I mean, it scales the game time, obviously, with champion level. It's roughly 1 minion of XP. Give or take. I mean, it's like close enough, right? Which means that realistically, this compensates for this pretty well. Yes, they're back in lane. They get 1 more CS. They get 20 more gold than they would have. But XP-wise, it's real close. And if they had TP, it's just objectively better for you. So as far as like 1v1 dominance, this is actually not big of a change. It's not that big of a change. But if you're killing them because of a gank, they get more XP and you get less XP. Yeah, if you kill top lane because, Elise showed up, you're less rewarded. I'm okay with that, personally. This also, by the way, does mean that this is less XP in a dual lane kill. Like, if just Leona plus, I don't know, I said Aurelia. If, like, Leona Xayah kills someone at level 2, it is less XP for that dual lane. For what it's worth, I'm okay with that. As someone who plays bot lane a fair bit, yeah, I'm fine with it. Like, I think bot can get in a really, really rough spot really quickly because 2 people can outscale you, not just 1. Yeah, I'm okay with slightly less snowballing down there, especially with how much you can like get dogpiled by like mid roam bot top TP jungle gank 4v2. It's like, yeah, let's just. I think it's fine. Ultimately, I think it's fine. I think it's not a big deal. Next up, jungle camp XP now scales at level 9+, even further. Instead of 25% more, 35% more XP. So late game hard farm junglers can go to their jungle a bit more. Worth pointing out, by the way, that this is the base XP of the camp. This is not jungler specific. So a level 10 Karthus poaching raptors is as rewarded, arguably more rewarded than the jungler doing this, because this is the jungle camp XP. Like the flat bonus that the jungle item gives is flat regardless. So like on a percentage difference scale, the percentage difference is bigger for a non-jungler than a jungler. In absolute XP difference, it's the same. And in general, if you are slightly underleveled as a jungler, this is meaningful as well because you want to get that next level. That's definitely meaningful. This also does some small things to late game shot calling where you are even more incentivized to, if you start taking map control, poach their jungle and poach their jungle a lot and just absorb all of the farm and further out level and out gold your opponents. It's another small push towards that. Low HP junglers heal more when they're below 30% on all of the hunter stuff. Cool. One for all balance changes. Practice tool can now let you actually affect the armor, MR, and health of the unit. That is awesome. That is great. I love it. This is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You can now fast forward 10 minutes. Also cool, you can spawn more of the camps. You can suicide your champion. You can fully stack the stacked runes. Great stuff. Love to see it. Super, super cool. Absolutely wonderful to see that. Some cool UI updates to Clash. A bunch of bug fixes. Some skins coming out. Coven Morgana, Coven LeBlanc, Coven Zyra, Coven Zyra Prestige. Some cool chromas. And that's the patch. Fairly short rundown. No TLDR this time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.